Hey guys, welcome to Euroleague Fantasy Talks. In this episode we will check what Ultimate Champions is serving us in those 2 weeks that we will not have neither Euroleague nor Eurocup games. And even if there will be no Euroleague or Eurocup games, Ultimate Champions this week are giving us a virtual game week for Eurocup, and next week we will have a virtual Euroleague game week. So let's try go and look how virtual game weeks work. You can do it by pressing here, learn more, and then there is some detailed formulas and guidelines. We can see here that for each club in virtual match, the system selects 3 of the club's recent games in the season as a reference to determine how each athlete of the club performed in the virtual match, and this is usually selected out of the last 20 games, unless there are less than 20 games of data available within the season, and this is exactly the case now, because all the teams in Eurocup played only 18 games so far in the season, so it will be data from all those 18 games. So it's 3 random games from the last 18 games of this season for each athlete. So because of the randomized data selection, athletes that perform better over the season will statistically perform equally well in virtual game weeks on average. Therefore, we want to pick players that have last 15 games average that is higher than their last 5 game average, as last 5 is also their cap. So we want to have as many players to score more points for us. So obviously the smaller the cap, but better the last 15 game average. So in short, athlete highlights, possession, actions, and assists, everything except points and 3-pointers is average from the 3 sample matches used. What I did, I selected players that have last 18 game average is higher than their last 5 game average, which is basically higher than their cap. And I also took players that have either didn't miss any game or have as little DNPs as possible. I think my highest player that has 4 games missed, but otherwise some of them have 0, 1 or 2 games missed. There's the whole section here explaining how points and 3-pointers are calculated, which is a bit different than taking average, but I'm still yet to analyze this for next game weeks. Therefore, I just went with easy and simple way to calculate the average and pick athletes that have the overall average scores higher than their last 5 average. And what is important in my eyes is that there is a modifier. If the team of the player that you pick wins that virtual match, then there is a 20% modifier to that athlete's score. Basically, how it is calculated is that after athlete action scores are calculated, all points scored by club's athletes in the virtual match are added together to make the final score for that club. And obviously the club with more points wins, unless there is a tie, then both clubs get a 10% modifier. Because of the data selection and athlete performance calculation methods, clubs that scored more in the season will score more points in virtual game weeks on average, but there is still room for surprises, of course. But I just analyzed a little bit the matchups we have for this virtual game week. So what I did, I just checked the matchups that we have and I wrote their points per game average in this Eurocup season. For example, London Lions have 90.3 points average per game and Cluj-Napoca have 86.5 average point per game. And because of the random data selection, it doesn't mean that London Lions will win this virtual matchup, but they have much better odds because it's almost 4 points more average than Napoca. But again, it is still possible for Napoca to win. Therefore, for this game week, in my eyes, it's good to pick London Lion players as they have a good chance of receiving 20% modifier. And same for Paris basketball because it's almost 10 points that they have over Gran Canaria players. And therefore, Gran Canaria players have a very high chance that they will not receive a modifier. So it works both ways. Although there are more trickier cases like Prometei and Ratia Parm Ulm, it's only 2-point difference, which is a bit slim chance. So still, there is a chance for both clubs to win, maybe a little bit more on Prometei side. There are easy picks like Wolves, which is more than 5 points difference on the Wolves side. As for example, Venice and Lietkabelis. It's only 1.3 point difference. So when I calculated, I didn't give modifier for projections of this. And therefore, let's now check what lineup I have managed to build for this virtual game week. I started my lineup with Ondrej Bolvin from Prometei. And also I put him as my captain, as I see for him having the biggest potential to score most points. Simply basically due to his last 18 games average. Here we see last 15 game average. He had 1 game that he missed, but in general he should produce us a very nice score. As my second player I picked Brian Angola from Hapoel. And as we can see here, he has much higher last 15 game average. He did have 4 games that he missed, so there is a bit risky pick. But that's the player that we have the riskiest with 4 games missed. Otherwise, all the other players that we picked have much smaller risks because they missed much less games, from 0 to 2 games. Then I picked Gediminas Redlik only for 87 cap points. But look at his average. He has so much potential to bring us a lot of points and he only missed 2 games. As my first guard, I have picked Javier Mumford from Hapoel. Mumford is very consistent scorer in terms of Ultimate Champion score at least, because he hasn't missed a single game this Eurocup season, and his last 15 game average, also last 18 game average, is higher than last 5 game average. So it's definitely a recommended pick. As my second guard, I have picked DJ Stewart. DJ Stewart has missed only 2 games, and definitely a much nicer last 18-point average than his cap. And the last 3 players that I pick is Tayo Diase from Prometei. Again, a very nice last 18 game average with 0 games missed. My second to last player is Kyle Alexander. Alexander only missed 1 game, and all the other games he had very high scores, and therefore his last 15 average and last 18 average is actually much higher than his cap. And I finished my lineup with Nadir Hifi. As we saw, Paris has the most points per game, and therefore are likely to win this virtual matchup, and giving Hifi and all the other Paris players a 20% modifier. And on top of that, Hifi didn't miss a single game and has much better last 18 game average compared to his cap. So definitely a recommended pick to have for this virtual game week. And that's all. That's my team for this first virtual game week. And then next week we'll build a EuroLeague virtual game week. So stay tuned. Otherwise, for more content on EuroLeague Fantasy, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you in the next one.